okay. But they say that it's the loneliest place in the world. And you can go and being a Midwesterner, you go to the grocery and get up to the checkout, and you speak to the person who is checking you out, and they look at you like you've got two heads. What do you mean talking to me? I don't know you. They're not interested in any form of conversation at all. Just get these things done and get them on. And everybody's always in a rush. I mean, we in Ohio, not bad. You get a little farther west, and it really slows down. But New York City can be, because of all the hustle bustle, people don't care. They're on a mission. They're on their way. They don't care about anything, and they're oblivious to anything and everything that's around them. And so, if you're there alone, you can be mighty alone. You've all heard the story of this man who, I think 1808, that's a long time ago, 200 years ago. He went to see the doctor and told the doctor that he had a mortal malady. And the doctor says, it's not mortal. He said, look, doctor, if you can't help me, I think I'll take my life. The doctor says, no. He says, it's not. What you need is to get away and just go someplace where everything is and you can laugh. Laughter does good like medicine. And so he said, what I prescribe for you is to go down to the circus. They have a clown there whose name is Grimaldi. He's the funniest man in the world. He will cheer you up. And he looked at the doctor and says, are you kidding me? He says, doctor, I am Grimaldi. Entertained all those many people, but he was the loneliest man in all of England, because he hid behind his makeup and his thing. Loneliness of society. Then there's the loneliness of skepticism. I suppose that if you look at John chapter 20, you see there Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said unto him, we have seen the Lord. But he said to them, except I shall see in his hands the print of his nails, and put my finger in the print of the nails, and thrust my hand in his side, I will not believe. Now, while 10 of the disciples are in the upper room and the Lord appears, Thomas is off somewhere else alone. He had said, well, let's go and die with him. I don't know. Some say that maybe he had a death wish. But perhaps I can almost, in my mind imagine that while they're in the upper room and the Lord appears to them there, Thomas is over maybe walking around in the Garden of Gethsemane. Yeah, I know what he said, but I don't believe it. I have to see it. Skeptical people are almost always on the outside of everything. It kind of separates them from other people. They ultimately become very lonely people. Skeptics. Some people are skeptical about anything and everything. I read a story about a young woman who was brought into a pastor's office, and she was a mess. And he could tell that she was. So he was trying to talk to her about the Lord, and he started to quote John 3:16, and she said, don't give me any of that. And she started pulling books off his shelf and said, you have to read all of these before you can know that God loves you? He said, no. She says, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever read Voltaire? The pastor said, yes, I've read his writings. Have you read them? She said, yes, I love him. The pastor says, let me ask you this. Has he made you happy? Has he brought joy into your life? She says, no, he's made me miserable and I want to take my life. You see, earlier in her life, her sister had passed away and she became skeptical about the existence of God and God loving, and it put her on the outside of anything and everything. Her life was totally a mess. Skepticism. Our universities crank them out by the thousands every year. If you're not a skeptic before you go there, they will train you to be one. When it comes time to go out of this life into eternity, you find often that at the end, like Theodore Parker, who was an infidel, for 25 years he wrote skeptically about God and who he was, and he came down to the end of his life and he says, my life has been a failure, a total failure. I have failed domestically. I have no children. I have failed socially. People look at me as like I'm a pirate or some kind of an evil person. I failed professionally because, to the best of my knowledge, only one minister has taken up my ideas and way of thinking. Skepticism, loneliness of skepticism. It puts you on the outside of the normal realm of thought and so forth. Then, in John chapter 13, we see the loneliness of sin. When Jesus had said thus, he was troubled in spirit and testified and said, verily, verily, I say unto you that one of you shall betray me. He then, having received the sop, went immediately out, and it was night. You see, the one that was to betray him, the one who when the deed was done because of what he had done, he is separated from the rest of the group, and he ultimately takes his life. Judas Iscariot. And the interesting thing is, it says, and when he went out, it was night. The way of sin is always the way of darkness, as it was in the case of Judas. We can see in many instances how that people, because of their sin, are outcasts. They're alone and they're lonely. Much like this maniac of Gadara. While other folks were in bed at night, resting, sleeping, he was running through the tombs and around the countryside, running naked, an outcast totally from society. because of his